everybody, welcome back to the Tales of the Pod podcast. My name is Michaela, I'm your host.
And I'm your co-host, Nick.
How are you doing this week, Nick?
I'm doing good. How about you, Michaela?
I feel like we're like news anchors.
I know, I feel like it too. It's funny being on camera, just the way you act, knowing that you're on camera.
I know, I feel like exciting, weekly news.
I know, right? Exactly.
So essentially for this week's discussion, I wanted to do a whole episode on our favorite cult movies.
Mm-hmm.
Not movies that have a cult following, because that is an aspect of the horror genre as well.
Yes.
But more movies that are either about a cult, they have a cult in them, the main character's in a cult, something along those lines.
Right.
How do you feel about cult movies?
I like them. They're definitely a different, I guess, like kind of like a niche horror too, because it's like an organization that's like after you. It's not just like, a killer like, Chucky or something, or Jason coming after you, you know. So it's definitely kind of like a unique twist on it, So that's pretty interesting, and I like them. There's a lot of cult movies out there, but not as many as you would think, because it is kind of like a hard thing to make into like a horror movie. But I mean, throughout history, we've seen how horrible cults can be. So.
Right, and it's scary to have one main villain chasing you around and one crazed main villain, but then it's another thing to have a group of people that all share the same villain mentality going after the main character. That's almost scarier, because all these people are under the same like grand delusion that usually cults, they're doing something for the betterment of themselves, of the world.
Right.
A lot of people that join cults are usually vulnerable, they've had some losses in their life, and it's interesting to watch these movies. Once you're well informed on the cults that have taken place throughout American history, it's interesting to watch these movies and see what they pulled from real life cults.
Oh yeah, there's
to make their own fake cults, I guess.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, because you can see like they pulled some stuff, from actual cults,
Right, as well as like the same tactics for recruiting people.
Right.
I think a lot of that is similar. A lot of that they pulled, especially the Manson family. A lot of my research I found they pulled a lot from the Manson family.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And I think a big aspect of it is just the word cult kind of scares people. So even just a movie about a cult is scary, because the unknowingness of it, I suppose.
I know. I think people hear like cult and they think like occult,
Yes.
Like mystics and stuff like that.
Things they don't understand.
Yes, exactly. So, I guess I'll take it with my first film.
Sure.
It's the 1973's The Wicker Man, which it's a cult classic, but it's also about a cult. So just a little background on the movie. It's basically this police sergeant goes looking for this missing 12-year-old girl, and it's on this island called Summer Isle. And it's a famous island because of they have a huge apple export from there. They grow a lot of apples and export them and everything like that.
Love a good apple.
So he basically gets there, and the locals are kind of like denying that this girl ever even existed. So then he's like, okay, that's kind of weird. Why did I get a letter saying like there's a missing girl in your community? And like everyone's kind of denying. They're like, no, there's no girl. He even goes to the mother and asks, is this your daughter? And she's like, no, I've never had a daughter by that name. She's actually got a 7-year-old daughter, not a 12-year-old daughter. So they're kind of all being like really sketchy. And then the guy that owns the island basically is played by Christopher Lee. His name is Lord Summerisle. And it's just basically gets kind of crazy. Like the sergeant realizes that all the locals are pagans. So they practice, a lot of like unchristian things, and the sergeant's a very devout Christian in the movie. That's like a big thing in the movie, is like the Christianity and the pagan aspect in the whole movie and everything like that. So yeah, it's basically just like he goes looking for a girl and can't find her, and he ends up becoming the sacrifice for their harvest for their apples. Essentially, that's what they're trying to sacrifice him for. Is for like a good harvest.
So was there ever a missing girl, or was that just a way to lure the cop there?
I think it was just, I haven't seen this in a long time. I don't think there was a missing girl. I think it was just a way to get like a sacrifice brought there. I think the girl was real, but she was just in on it the whole time. I don't think there was actually ever a missing girl.
And if I'm not mistaken, I believe the ending of this movie is pretty pretty disturbing because they have like a big Wicker Man statue that they burn this cop alive in.
Yeah,
and you can hear him kind of screaming, and I think he goes like, "Oh Jesus" or something like that.
Yeah, God. Yeah, he's like, "God help me" or something like that.
Yeah, it's a very disturbing scene.
Yeah, and it's pretty iconic scene too at the end because you know it's just him and it's like the flames are around his face and everything, and he's screaming and stuff. It's very iconic. It's actually through the research and everything, it's probably one of the greatest cult horror movies ever made. Right. Horror movies about cults ever made because it was, I mean, for the time and everything, 1973, it was pretty like iconic, you know. So that's my number one right there.
So the whole island was the cult, essentially. They were all in on it. They were all using him as a sacrifice.
Yeah, it was a small island, and it was all really just, it was a small community. I never got like an answer, because doing the research looking for like about the cults in these movies, they don't really give a whole lot of backstory to them, you know. As
some of them are just completely made up, so it's kind of hard to find a backstory on them.
Yes, exactly. So it is kind of hard to find a backstory, but basically what I found, it's an island, you know, a small Scottish island, and it's just a group of people living on them that all practice paganism.
And they do the human sacrifice for their crops, I'm assuming?
Yes, yeah, that's what that's for the harvest.
For the harvest, okay.
Yeah. So, and that's kind of a theme, I feel like, in some of these, is like it's for the betterment of something they're sacrificing, or, you know, doing something to better the cult or the society. So
yeah, a human sacrifice to better everybody as a whole. Kind
of thing. Yeah, and you'll see that in a lot of these movies that we picked out. You'll see the theme for like harvest or the betterment of the cult.
It's funny you picked that one as your first one, because for my first one, I picked a movie that I think pulls a lot from The Wicker Man, for sure. Mm-hmm. It's probably known as the cult movie, or at least the most well-known, newest cult movie.
For sure.
I picked Midsommar by Ari Aster. Mm-hmm. Those of you who have seen Midsommar, you know exactly. I'm sure you've never seen it again more than once.
Oh, I love Midsommar. That's one of my favorite movies.
It's definitely one of the best, well-done horror movies about a cult, at least in recent years. So the movie came out in 2019, and essentially the main character, Danny, played by Florence Pugh, which I love her. I think she's a great actress.
She's a great actress.
And she does a great job in this movie. This is one of her breakout roles. Mm-hmm. She goes through some traumatic events. Her little sister kills herself, and her parents end up dying as well. I believe of carbon monoxide poisoning in the house, and she walks in and she finds them all together. So she goes through a traumatic experience. She kind of clings on to her boyfriend, who's trash. He's absolute trash.
Yeah, he's not a nice guy.
He's trash. So she's hanging out with her boyfriend, and one of the guys in his dorm, his name is, I'm probably saying it wrong, but I think it's Pelle.
Pelle, I think.
Pelle. Yeah. He's from Sweden, and he invites the boyfriend, Danny, the main character, and some of the other roommates to his country, essentially, for what they call a Midsummer Festival. Mm-hmm. So every 90 years, they celebrate the festival of Midsummer, where this cult essentially perform human sacrifices and elect a May Queen. Yes. And Midsummer is a real thing in Sweden, obviously without the human sacrifices, but it is a real event that happens.
I believe it actually ties to like ancient Norse like mythology tradition, you know. So it's still kind of a practice thing in the northern rural parts of, you know, Scandinavia, Norway, Sweden, Finland.
And these are all grad students, so they all kind of take the trip with the idea of they're all going to write their thesis paper on this presumed cult, or at the time they think it's more of a religion, but they're all going to write their thesis paper on it, so they're all like, oh yeah, we'll go to Sweden. So essentially they get there, and this cult-like community is called Haga, which I could be saying that wrong. There's an accent on the A, so maybe Haga.
Where do you see it?
Right here.
I don't know what the little... I thought it was an umlaut, because that would be like A, so it'd be like Hagar.
I don't know. I'm just going to say Hargo in my English-American voice. It's a Swedish pagan cult. It's one of the biggest aspects of this cult is how isolated they are. They're not in, like, the mainland of Sweden. They're very isolated. They're in almost this, like, small valley in the middle of nowhere. And it's just them. Everyone that lives there is a part of this commune, apparently.
Right.
When they first get there, you know, they're very welcomed. There's a lot of food, events. They're kind of just immersed into culture, and then it kind of escalates from there to things like human sacrifice, as I stated before.
Right.
And the way they sacrifice humans is in a very, I guess, paganism way. Like, they do one where they make this guy, like, a human butterfly. They take, like, his lungs out, and they hang him, and he looks like a human butterfly. And essentially the whole point of Pelle bringing these friends here was as part of the Midsummer sacrifice.
Uh-huh.
And as we stated in Wicker Man, they sacrifice people for the goodness of their commune, the crops, all of that good stuff.
Right.
And then Florence Pugh, she ends up winning the, I guess, dance-off, I'd say.
Yeah, it was kind of, I guess it was a dance-off.
It reminds me of, the Dancing Plague. There was that story in history where people just kept dancing and nobody knew why. They thought maybe something was in the bread or in the...
Yeah, it was like ergot poisoning. And
yes.
I think that's because that movie, I remember Midsummer, it was very like drug-induced too. Like they, like when they first get to the thing, they all take mushrooms and stuff.
I think that's one of the biggest... I was going to talk about the aspects of this cult and how they kind of get people in. And one of the biggest things is drugging them. They give them mushrooms, so they're kind of on a trip. And when Florence Pugh wins the dance-off to be a May Queen, she's tripping.
Oh, yeah,
so
they're all tripping, yeah.
She doesn't even know what she wins.
Right.
So essentially she wins May Queen and orders, all her friends to essentially be killed, and they're all killed in, like, a very ritualistic, sacrificial way.
Mm-hmm.
Another part of this cult is definitely the isolation aspect. They're away from all society. If they bring people in, it's very organized. Everybody's on the same, like, thought wavelength,
Right.
No one's exposing them or telling them more information than they need. There's a lot to this cult. Elders are very well respected. They kind of run everything. And then we see in one of the first opening scenes is that when elders hit a certain age, I think it's 70, they're supposed to kill themselves.
Yeah.
And then they jump off the cliff and you see, their heads smash.
Yeah, very good effects there.
Very good
looks
special effects.
Very real.
Yes, very big on elders and hierarchy, people that hold positions of authority.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Yep, so many of their rituals are tied to changing seasons in nature. And yeah, this is just it's a great movie of the cult. I mean, we watched a YouTube video not too long ago about this FBI agent, and he works on deprogramming people of cults.
Uh-huh.
And he kind of broke down some scenes from Midsummer, and even there's a part where Florence Pugh was crying because she just saw her boyfriend being cheated on her.
Right.
And all the girls in the cult are kind of mimicking her crying.
Yes.
And you're watching it, and you're like, this is just very... It's very Ari Aster, if you know, you know.
Yeah.
You're thinking it's just uncomfortable, it's weird, like, why is everybody mimicking her crying and screaming?
Oh, yeah.
And he kind of breaks it down to say that when you do that in a cult, it takes away somebody's individualism.
Yeah, because now it's like you're giving it all to, like, the whole body of the cult.
The commune. Like, it's not, you don't have individual feelings anymore.
Yes.
You have the feelings of everybody.
Right, you have to respect everybody's feelings, not just your own, and that's what they're kind of showing.
A very visually appealing movie, though. Like, the movie is just gorgeously...
Oh, he does a great job filming the vibrant colors and everything.
Yes.
I love that.
I love the contrast between the bright colors in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was filmed in Sweden.
And I'm pretty sure it was, too. Yeah.
And it's gorgeous, the contrast between that and then the brutal human sacrifices.
Oh, I know.
Very
Some of those kills, like the one you were saying,
the butterfly?
Yeah, that's actually came from an actual... I don't know if it's actually true, but I think it came from the Poetic Eddas in Norse mythology, but that was a way that Vikings would kill people. It's called...
I know it goes back to medieval times, at least.
Yeah, it's called the blood eagle, where the lungs are pulled out from your back and set on your shoulders, and you're strung up like that, so it looks like you're an eagle, essentially. Yeah. It's super brutal, and you can only imagine what that looks like, and Ari Aster did a very good job.
He was still alive. Like, when she walked into the barn at the end, his lungs are still inflating and deflating.
That was the point. It was a torture method. It wasn't a way to kill somebody. Yeah. Like, I can't imagine having your lungs pulled from you.
And his eyes were gouged out as well, and then her boyfriend, which he's trash, so...
Right.
He gets, they put him in a bear suit, they skin a bear and they put him inside the bear and they light everything on fire so he can't even move. I believe he's drugged as well. He's paralyzed.
Yeah, they gave him like some sort of paralyzing agent to kill him, or not to kill him, but to make him not move so he can burn to death.
Florence Pugh, she's the new May Queen, so now she can procreate with Pele because, they've been inbreeding for years because they're so isolated.
Right.
So there's a lot to that movie. A great movie about cults. For me, it's a one and done. I really only just see that. I've seen that movie twice and that was enough.
I love that movie. I can watch it like every year. I mean, I think it's a great film.
It's crazy.
And it does. It's very good at capturing the whole like essence of a cult.
I think
it's
so.
very like they all sit down and have dinner together and they do all that stuff. Like it's very good.
And they're very big on like old rituals and I almost want to say like witch practices with things because there's one scene where the one girl she's part of the cult, and she likes Florence Pugh's boyfriend, and she like tweezes some of her hair and puts it in his food.
Yeah.
And they think that that's a way to maybe make him fall in love with her.
Right. Yeah. Like there's some like spells or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, definitely a great movie. Definitely one of my favorites for sure.
What you got?
All right, I picked for my number 2. I got Children of the Corn. It came out in 1984. It was actually a short story written by Stephen King that came out, I think, in like mid-70s, like 77, I think, and it was actually published. Believe it or not, where it got published was in Penthouse magazine. So it's kind of funny to think there's like a horror story in Penthouse magazine. So that was a little fun fact. But basically, I mean, I'm sure everybody's seen Children of the Corn. Again, it's a cult classic, but it's about a cult as well. It's a fictional small Nebraska town called Gatlin. It's surrounded by cornfields. Then one day, this mysterious preacher boy, man-child. I don't really know if he's a boy or a man, but
he looks like a preteen, I guess.
Yeah, but he's like old-looking. It's weird. He arrives and he takes all the kids into a cornfield and starts telling them like this weird, twisted, like Judeo-Christian demon story about this demon that's called He Who Walks Behind the Rows, meaning like the rows of corn. And then basically he gets this kid, Malachi, to take all the kids back into town and start killing all the adults. And it's pretty crazy. It's a crazy movie. Yeah, and you know, there's the cult itself. We don't really, again, I don't think we actually get a name of the cult. I think it's kind of referred to as some things. As we pull it up, because I think it was referred to something. Yeah, it's just called, I guess, Children of the Corn. Yeah, it's basically just.
It's a good movie.
It's a good movie.
It's an interesting take on a cult because usually adults are the ones running the cults.
Yeah, it's cool.
You don't ever see children. I like to see the roles reversed.
Yeah, it's cool to see like the roles reversed like that. But yeah, I mean it's a good film. Trying to think of what to say here next because there's a lot to cover about the cult. So it's ran by that boy child Isaac, and yeah, I guess his lieutenant's this kid Malachi, and there's really not much left to say about it because they don't really go into like the whole cult aspect, but it is like a cult of children. You know, they worship this deity, and that's I don't really know what for. I think it's just because it's like the whole like God-fearing thing. Like we have to do whatever to appease this God. You know.
Yeah.
And the thing ends up, I think, being real. Like, it's an actual real thing. So I remember at the end of the movie, the thing's, like, running through the corn rows and everything. It's like this worm kind of tremor-looking thing.
Yeah. No, it's interesting because the first time watching that, you don't really pick up on the cult aspect. You just kind of think these kids are maybe just rebelling or something like that, or they want to run the town themselves. But then the more you watch it, and when we researched this, I was like, oh, I guess it would be a cult.
I mean, it is.
They are sacrificing for a higher purpose, and they're all sharing the same mentality. I'm sure that would fall under the definition of a cult.
Yeah, and one of the things they do, too, is once somebody so it's all kids, so it's kind of weird how they focus only on kids, because it's like, once you reach 18, you're now sacrificed. And there's a scene in it where they're sacrificing this kid who just turned 18. And he's like all ready to go for it. You know, he was like wanting to be sacrificed and everything. And
it's definitely a cult.
Yeah, it's very culty like that. You know, so it's a good movie. It's funny that it's kind of. It's not really a funny movie, but there's some funny like parts in it. You know, it's just
it's old. It's campy.
It's a funny idea, I guess, to have kids being a cult. But I mean, I can see what Stephen King was trying to do with it and the story and everything like that, because it is kind of terrifying to have like kids turn on you. But it is kind of comical at the same time to think like all the adults in the town got killed by children.
Well, I would say more the element of surprise. Like you wouldn't think your kid would kill you. Like you feel very vulnerable around your child, and then
I get that. But it was like in a violent way. It's like they're attacking them with like knives and stuff like that. Yeah. It's like I don't get how a grown man can't overpower like a 15-year-old.
It's a story.
You know? I know. It's just, but it's it's kind of funny looking back at it. You know, I know like that takes the whole fun out of it. Thinking like that, I know.
Kids believe in things like that. Kids listen to each other. They listen to the oldest. You know, kids listen to the oldest out of the group. So if the oldest is saying, there's this God we need to appease, we need to kill all our parents, they'll listen.
Right. Yeah, but then it's like, how old is Isaac? Because like some say he's like only 9 years old. Like some of the research. So it's like, but he looks like he's like like 25, 30.
Stacked.
I think they did a good job to pick him because you're kind of like, is he a boy? Is he a man?
Maybe he's lying about his age to stay in the cult.
Maybe?
I don't know. Sacrificed,
Well, yeah, and then at the end of the movie, I think they end up sacrificing. Malachi turns on him and sacrifices Isaac.
I haven't seen that movie in a while. We just watched the second one. I don't recommend.
Yeah, they did a couple. Actually, they did like 5, I think, after this, and they're not the greatest.
Yeah,
but if you like horror, I mean, they're always a good, trilogy, or not trilogies, but, series are always fun.
Yeah, it's a good story for sure.
So yeah, that is my number 2.
Okay, so for my next one, I picked, it's a lesser known movie. It's called The Lodge. I believe it's on Hulu if anybody wants to check it out. It's a lesser known movie. It's got the kid from It in it. So it has some bigger actors. I believe the girl in there, she's from Something Big too. But essentially there's this family, their mom kills herself, so the dad kind of gets a new girlfriend. Mm-hmm. So they go away to, I think they're in Massachusetts, they're in this lodge in the middle of nowhere for Christmas, and they're all going to spend the time together. And they the kids, of course, hate the new stepmom. So they're doing some research on her, and they find out that the new stepmom, her name is Grace, she actually escaped a cult when she was younger.
Yep.
Her dad ran this, I guess it would best be described as some kind of branch of Christianity cult. And essentially everybody in the cult killed themselves except for Grace. Her dad was the leader of the cult, and he kept her alive so she can continue to spread the message of the cult, which is just beyond traumatic. I can't even believe that's a thing.
No, especially being a young girl, too.
Being a young girl. So Grace she's sweet. She's damaged. She takes her medication. She tries to bond with the children. The dad has to leave the lodge.
Yeah, why does he have to leave? I can't remember.
He's a journalist, and he has to leave for some story or something.
Okay.
So she's left alone with the kids, and the kids kind of do all these little tricks on her to make her think she's going crazy. They hide her medication from her, so she really starts to go crazy.
Right.
They start playing her father's sermons in the background, so she thinks that she's hearing them in her head. They play videos from the mass suicide, and in the mass suicide, it's very disturbing. They all have tape over their mouths that say sin, S-I-N, written on their mouth.
Yeah.
And I forgot how they killed. I think it was similar to like Jonestown. I think they drank something. I'm not sure. But she was a little girl. She's the only one left alive. So she starts kind of losing her shit in the middle of this cabin in the middle of nowhere. So basically, by the time the dad returns home, she has both kids tied up at the dining room table with tape over their mouth saying sin.
Yes.
She shoots and kills the dad, puts him on the table, and the whole time she's kind of hemming the song that her dad used to sing when they were doing the mass suicide.
Right.
And the scene is it's so disturbing because she's just fully reverted back to this belief that she's in the cult again.
Right, and she's doing what her father would have done,
She's carrying out his acts, and then essentially both children die at the end as well.
Yeah.
And it's a great movie. It's a little bit of a slow burn, but the way it's filmed is just very dark. It's in the middle of winter. Mm-hmm. And then it just builds up to this really big ending, and she just reverts back to her cultish ways. I mean,
I know. Doesn't the kids try to tell her too that they were just messing with her, but she's just like she does not believe it. She's
the kids try to tell her they were messing with her because it gets to the point where they walk in and she has her pants down and she's using the fire poker to burn her legs to repent for her sins.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, like we're just kidding. It's fine. You didn't do anything wrong. And the kids actually have her convinced that she's in purgatory.
Oh, really?
So she's, like, in limbo, essentially.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Yeah, that would make sense. Then,
the kids, like, cut the power. There's no heat. The kids are little shits. They type up a fake obituary saying rest in peace to all of them, saying that they were killed by carbon monoxide poisoning because they used like a space heater when they were sleeping.
Oh, wow.
So she thinks they're in purgatory, so she starts doing crazy shit, burning her legs, saying she needs to repent so she can, get to heaven kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then, she carries out these acts at the end. And
it is a good movie. I really like that movie.
It's a good movie. It's not as popular or well known about. I think it was just like a Hulu original or something, but it's very well done. I'm not sure. There was no name. I couldn't find anything specific on the name of the cult. Right. But from what I could gather, some kind of branch of Christianity, something like that. I'm assuming with the sin and the repenting for the sins.
Right.
But yeah, crazy.
Yeah, good movie. I definitely like that one. That was a good one. Glad you showed me that. All right, I picked Hereditary for number 3. It came out in 2018.
Another Ari Aster.
Yep, an Ari Aster film. Great director. On a side note, real quick, that Beau is Afraid. Definitely, I just want to say to everybody, go watch it because it is a good movie. I've heard, that's gotten a lot of bad raps because it's just very out there, but it's a very good movie, and it's an Ari Aster film too, and it's really good. Just go give it a watch. I'm not going to say anything more, but just sit through it, and it'll make a lot of sense at the end. All right, so back to this. So basically, this girl, Annie, she's a miniature model maker. Her mother dies, and her mom's, like, very secretive. Mm-hmm. They don't really, like, know a lot about her.
She has a lot of friends that the family doesn't know.
Yeah, exactly.
She's in, like, clubs.
Yeah, clubs. That's
the best way to put it.
And, so basically, once the mom dies, Annie starts thinking that the mom's ghost has come back to the house, because I think the mom was living with them, too.
I think when she was dying.
Yeah, when you're, like, on her last, like, hospice, essentially. So she starts thinking that the mom's spirit has come back, and so she, like, tries to communicate with it. Then, eventually, she ends up losing her daughter.
If you know, you know that
Yeah,
scene.
you know the scene in a very, very horrific way. And then, like, now she thinks, like, the daughter's spirit's in the house now, too. So she starts trying to communicate with it. And before all that happens, she's going to, like, these grief counseling meetings. She meets this lady, Joan, that used to be one of her mom's friends. And Joan's actually part of this cult.
Yes,
and
very big part of
it. Essentially, she kind of gets Annie into, like, trying to communicate with it, because Joan knows it's not the mom or the child, it's this demon Payman that they're trying to bring up. And Payman is actually, he's a real, not real, but he's actually mentioned throughout history as part of, like, one of the 9 kings of hell. And the cult is trying to bring him into, like, physical form, essentially.
Yes.
They're trying to bring him from hell up to, Earth or whatever. And that's the whole goal. So basically, as the movie transpires, the demon becomes more and more
like
apparent, I guess. Like stuff, like weird stuff starts happening. Like, doesn't the dad, like, light himself on fire or something like that?
He gets lit on fire. He doesn't light himself on fire. And then the son kind of starts having attacks.
Yeah, he starts getting possessed by him.
There's a scene where he's in the classroom. He just bashes his head out to the desk a million times.
Yes.
And in reality, I believe they wanted the daughter all along.
Yeah,
So when she gets killed in a supposed accidental way, it was kind of forced upon by, like, a higher being, I'd assume. Like,
right.
Because the way you'd have to watch it, but, like, she basically gets she gets decapitated by a telephone pole.
Yeah.
But even on the telephone pole is an imprint of the logo for this cult.
Yes.
So it's kind of like it's been pre-planned all along, and they needed some kind of sacrifice, and when the grandma died, it kind of put all this plan into motion.
Yeah.
Because Annie said in the beginning that the grandma always had, like, a special relationship with the daughter. She was kind of like her favorite.
Yeah, it was like and the daughter, the granddaughter liked the grandma a lot, too.
Yes.
So she was, like, really distraught when the grandma died and everything like that. And then, basically, so, like, once the possession, I guess, of the boy came through, like, the cult all gathers in the house, and they're, like, worshiping him, and, like, hail Payman, and stuff like that, and it ends basically right there, like,
they're all, like, in a treehouse, and there's these people, and they're all naked. I think some of them are missing their heads, and they're all kind of, like, it's creepy the way they move, like, left to right. It's very creepy.
because, like, I think even the grandma's there.
And the mom's there.
And the mom's there, too.
The grandma's dead body's there, and the mom's there doing it, too.
Yeah, and the mom, she got possessed, too, because she was, like, trying to kill...
Yes, and then the husband
them or something.
The husband had to die for some reason. I don't remember. It reminds me of Paranormal Activity, if anybody's familiar with that movie. Like kind of the cult in that.
Yeah.
Is that it's all about women, and the husbands always die, so the women always kill their husbands. And that's kind of what it was with this cult, was the husband had to die for some reason.
Yes.
He can't be around, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I didn't really get a, like, solid answer on why.
Maybe because he's not blood related.
That definitely could be it as well. But... yeah, that's essentially the cult in it. So it's kind of relates, it's a real thing, I guess, that could be done, because Payman is technically believed in Christian, mythology to be one of the 9 kings of hell, you know. So it could be like a take on a real cult, I guess, which there probably are,
I'm sure there is cults out there,
that worship this specific deity.
Same with, like, what he did with Midsummer, you pull from different aspects of cults to make your own kind of fake cult or
Right, exactly.
fictional cult kind of thing.
Exactly. So yeah, great movie. Definitely a good. You know, you don't think it's about a cult really until like the very end, especially when like the Joan lady gets involved. You kind of like are like, okay, she's kind of weird.
Well,
like,
even at her house, like on her walking mat when you walk into her house is the symbol for the cult, but the mom doesn't put it together.
Yes.
You know, like the grandma had a necklace with the symbol of the cult, and there's all these little clues throughout the movie, and once you watch it more than once, you pick up on it more.
Yeah.
But at first, you're thinking maybe paranormal.
Yeah, you just think it's like a ghost, you know, or like a demon, but
Which
it's
I guess
not.
it is, yeah.
Yeah, but you know, it's not like you don't think there's a cult involved.
No.
Not, you know, obviously until the end when the cult's
you don't
all
think
there.
they're being summoned. Nothing's being summoned.
Right. So yeah, that's my number 3 there.
Okay, so I picked perhaps one of the cultiest horror movies there is. I picked Rosemary's Baby. Directed by Roman Polanski. Came out in 1968. I'm sure everybody's seen Rosemary's Baby. Essentially, a man and a woman, they move into new apartments, I believe in New York City, and they kind of make friends with their neighbors, who's an older couple. The main girl in the movie, the pregnant woman, what's her name?
Mia Farrow?
Mia Farrow, that's what it is, I was blanking. So Mia Farrow's pregnant, her husband is an aspiring actor.
Yeah, that's right.
And all throughout this movie, weird things start happening during her pregnancy. You know, they become close with these neighbors, and then all of a sudden her husband starts kind of limiting what books she can read, what like music she can listen to, like starts being very controlling. This movie is just the definition of gaslighting. Like, this is one of the first times I think where the woman was like, no, something's wrong, and the husband's like, no, you're fine, you're good. And she's like, no, something's wrong with this baby, like something's happening, and they're like, no, you're fine.
Yeah, and then I remember too that weren't the elderly neighbors that they were friends with, like they were giving the mom like a drink to drink. It was like an elixir to like keep the demon or kill the baby that was in her and put the demon in her or something.
They were even controlling what doctor she could see.
Yeah.
So essentially, the neighbors were a part of this satanic coven cult, and I found that the cult actually originated in, I'm not going to say this right, La Chimère, Paris. That's where it originates from. But it's basically a satanic cult, and their goal is to bring upon the Antichrist. So they use Rosemary and her baby to get this mission done, essentially. So yeah, they're giving her drinks, they're drugging her, they're controlling what doctor she sees. Eventually, they get her husband in on it with the promises of giving him an acting career. Which, in this whole movie, I mean, these people are literally bringing upon the Antichrist, and you're watching it, and you're like, the husband's still a bigger piece of shit.
I know, right?
That's his wife, and he's selling her out for an acting career. Like, these people think they're doing something, I guess, better for the world, but
exactly.
he's just doing it for an acting career.
Right.
Let's see. So at the very end, it's kind of a slow burn of a movie. I think it's held up well in today's society still. I think it touches on a lot of topics.
Yeah, definitely.
But at the end of the movie, she kind of enters the neighbor's apartment, and they're all dressed in dark cloaks, like typical cult attire.
Oh, yeah.
And she doesn't even fight it at that point. All she does is spit on her husband, which, icon. Queen behavior right there. Spits on her husband, and her baby's there, and he's like in this black carriage, and they don't show the baby, but it kind of alludes to the fact that it's terrifying looking.
Yeah, it's like goat looking and stuff, typical image of demon, Satan, whatever.
Yes. And then the movie ends, but this is just, this movie touches on a lot of things, pregnancy, like horror during pregnancy, like how scary it can be.
Thinking there's something wrong with the child, you know.
And no one's listening to you. Women's rights. Things like that, just men being pieces of shit and gaslighting their wives.
Oh, yeah.
That's a big aspect of it, but the cult part of it is just preying on and she's so innocent, she's so sweet in this movie, just preying on a nice, sweet girl to...
I know, birth the
Antichrist. And there's a scene where even Rosemary makes friends with a woman in the apartment building. They start doing laundry together, and the cult kills her. They throw her off the building, and they say that she killed herself.
Yeah, I know.
And she's crazy. Like, what happened to my friend? And they're like, oh, she killed herself, she was into drugs. And Rosemary's like, what?
Yeah, it made no sense. Yeah.
And all these things, just, like, the math isn't mathing on anything. Nothing's adding up, and you find out at the end why they're doing, why the neighbors are so creepy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely one of my favorites. And it's what is that, 68 that came out? Yeah, so, I mean, it's stood the test of time, really. I mean, it's still a great
that's
movie.
pretty bold, I mean.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think it was pretty, shocking, too, for the time. Like, everyone, it was like, until The Exorcist came out, that was, the movie that was like, oh, my God,
Like, to mess with Satanists and babies in the same movie.
I know, right?
At that time was very bold, I'd say.
Oh, for sure.
But no, good movie.
Yeah, I like that one for sure. So I picked, for my number 4, I picked Martyrs. We've talked about Martyrs a bunch in this podcast,
It's
so I'm not gonna... Yeah, I'm not going to go into like the story background or anything because we've talked about it in a couple episodes. But the cult in it is what I kind of want to focus on. So the cult was established in 1971. It's called the Mademoiselle. I'm going to say this wrong. Mademoiselle. Mademoiselle.
I don't know. They're French, so something.
Yeah, Mademoiselle.
Yeah, maybe.
It's like woman or lady, I think, in French. Mademoiselle.
I took like half the semester of French.
I can't say the word, but it's called the Mademoiselle Society. And basically, what the cult's goal is, so there's like a very fine line between life and death, and they think if they torture, it's either it's women or children they go after. So they basically torture either a woman or child to like the point of death, and they kind of get this gaze, and that's what they're like focused on in the whole movie is this gaze that this person has. I mean, when I say gaze, I mean like looking out into like nothing. And that's what they're focused on because that's what they're actually thinking these people are seeing when they have this gaze is they're looking into the afterlife. And that's like the whole is like what's after death, which is it's a cool concept for a cult, I guess, you know, and for a movie. Just, you know, what does happen after? I mean, that's like the question of
it's a bigger purpose than some other cults, I'd say.
Oh yeah, it's like the question of the eons. You know, it's like is there life after death? You know, and that's what they're trying to find out.
I have beef with the ending of this movie.
Yeah, the ending's very controversial because it's like this one girl Anna, she ends up is it Anna or Lucy?
Anna. It
is Anna. Okay. She ends up becoming this quote unquote martyr, and that's what they call these people that have this gaze or martyrs. Hence the name of the movie, and she gets this gaze, so like there's this huge meeting, like all these, and this cult's like they're like the elite, you know, wealthy. They're very wealthy people from all around the world. They get like flown into this house where she's having this gazing experience, and Mademoiselle, she asked Anna what she saw, and
you don't hear it. Whispers to her.
Yeah, and it's in French, so there's no subtitles saying what she's saying to her. But then the next thing you know, Mademoiselle is like storming out of there, goes up into the bathroom and kills herself.
So, she says abandon all hope or something like
that.
She
says something like that. She says something before she kills herself. And so it makes you wonder what she see? What did she tell her?
That's what's frustrating, yeah.
And you never know. So it's like, but you can kind of maybe take the hint that like there's something greater after death, so maybe that's why Mademoiselle went and killed herself.
I took it the other way. I took it as, like, there's nothing, like, abandonment. That's why she said abandon all hope, because I took it as, like, you know, she saw nothing. She just saw lights out.
Well, then why would she kill herself?
But then why would she say abandon all hope?
But why would she go and kill herself?
But then why would she say abandon all hope? You know, like, why, if she was...
I understand what you're saying, but why would she kill herself? Why wouldn't she be like, okay, there's nothing?
If she didn't say anything, I would agree with you, but then why did she tell the guy to abandon all hope? If there's nothing left, you know?
I don't know, but what I'm saying is if there is something beyond greater than, you know, life after death, why would you want to wait around another 30 years to die and then kill yourself? You know, you can kill yourself right now and you'd be in a better place, you know? So that's what I'm kind of
I don't know. I did a lot of research on that one online to try to find out what she said, and everybody goes back and forth, and I think that's probably the goal of it, is to get people talking.
I think, that's what I mean. It's like controversial because
there's people going back and forth and seeing.
Yeah, there's no definitive answer. It's a great film. Probably one of the best movies I've ever seen, honestly. I mean, it's pretty violent, obviously.
Super violent.
It's a super violent movie, but it has a deeper meaning, I think, to it. It's fucking great movie. Good, and the cult is it's creepy too. The cult, I mean, the forms of what they do to these people. I'm not going to go into too much detail.
It's very creative the way they torture these people too. Like, you could just beat somebody up extensively, but the way they torture these people is very creative.
It's systematically. I mean, they like feed them, they take care of them, they cut their hair, you know, and then they beat the crap out of them. Yeah, you know, and then like eventually you just give up and you like let the abuse just keep happening until finally. And yeah, the way I think. I'm gonna give a little spoiler because it is pretty badass way that Anna becomes or gets the gaze is she's like basically filleted and skinned alive. Yes. Nothing. There's all the skin's taken off her body except her face, and you see it like in the movie. It's pretty violent, and she's just like suspended by this like weird operating table chain thing.
She's like face down, suspended.
Yeah, it's super creative way, and super violent too, and that's how she gets the gaze. I can't imagine having all your skin ripped off of you, you know.
Well, and I think like when they shave your head and things like that too, you're just dehumanizing her as well.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're making them give up, and I think that's a big part of cults too. Is they like take away your individuality, they dehumanize you.
Yeah, it make you look like nobody special.
Yes,
you know?
You're not yourself anymore.
Exactly. So definitely a good take on cults in that film for sure.
Okay, so my next pick is probably one of the best underrated horror movies of all time. If you haven't seen it, go look it up right now. I think it's on Tubi, and watch it immediately. It's called The Void.
Oh, I love that movie.
I've shown this movie to more people because I think everybody should see it in their lifetime. I show it to everybody, and I always get the same response at the end. Everybody's just like, what the hell did I just watch?
I know, right?
It's one of those movies that starts off really, really good, and you're super into it, and you're like, wow, this is like going to be a good movie, and then it just like goes balls to the wall, and you're like, what is happening?
Right.
So it starts off essentially, it's kind of confusing. It's like some movies start off slow, and they give you like a little bit of introduction. This just goes like right for it, and it opens with these cops, and they're chasing some drug addicts through the woods. And then it flips to another cop who's kind of just sitting in his car, and he sees somebody kind of crawling on the road. They're all bloody. They need help, essentially. So he brings them to the hospital. The hospital in this town is like a skeleton of a hospital.
Yeah, I think it's being shut down, right?
It's being shut down because they had a fire, so they're in transition of moving to another facility. So they have like a skeleton crew. They have like 2 nurses,
right.
1 doctor. They don't have a lot of supplies.
Mm-hmm.
So he brings them there. And there's a doctor there. His name is Dr. Powell.
Yeah.
And there's a teenage girl, and she's about to give birth as well, so she's at the hospital. And things start kind of going wrong. People kind of start getting possessed, I would say. They look outside. There's all these people in white cloaks. They have triangles over their cloaks, so you can't see their face. There's just a black triangle over their face.
Yeah.
And they're all just kind of standing outside. And I think somebody tries to make a run for it, and they get cut by one of these triangle guys.
Yeah.
So essentially, they're all locked inside this hospital. They can't leave because there's this massive call of probably 50 people outside.
Right.
Things start going crazy inside the hospital. There's this creature that comes out of nowhere, some kind of like animal monster.
Yeah, very like
monstrosity thing.
Like H.P. Lovecraft for you horror fans that like H.P. Lovecraft.
So it's funny you say that. When I did research for this movie, it is based on a H.P. Lovecraft.
Oh, really?
Monster. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be like Cthulhu or something like that. Yeah.
So as the movie goes on, you kind of find out that this Dr. Powell, the only doctor in the hospital, lost his daughter not too long ago, and he made a deal with these interdimensional beings to sacrifice a baby, and then he'll get his daughter back.
Yeah.
But the way he gets his daughter back is this creature-looking thing.
Oh, yeah.
And it's actually called a Sarah creature because his daughter's name was Sarah, and actually the way I found it described online is a quadruple zombie-like creature covered in disease, necrotic flesh, and tentacles. It walks on its knuckles like a large gorilla and has a skull-like face with tentacles replacing the bottom jaw.
Yep.
It says so basically the pregnant teenager that's in there, her baby is sacrificed as part of this ritual, and then the doctor kind of turns into like this alien being. Like this is what I mean when the movie just goes balls to the wall after a while.
It's because it's like immediately, like, what, maybe 25 minutes into the movie, and it just turns into this, like, H.P. Lovecraft horror novel. I mean, it's brilliant. I love this movie. It's so freaking good.
Yes. And I did a lot of research to try to find the name of this cult, and it's based on a lot of different cults in history, but it's not a specific cult, essentially.
Sure.
But there is a lot of cults in history that have, creatures like this that think that you can, sacrifice with interdimensional beings and get a loved one back, or get somebody who's deceased back.
Sure.
So there is a lot of cults similar to this throughout history. There hasn't been one around in a long time.
Right.
But yeah, I couldn't find a specific name for it, but definitely a creative one. It's not the typical, like, satanic, sacrifice thing.
It's nothing to do with, like, the religion at all. It's there's, like, and it's cool, like, how in the movie, too, like, because, the one girl and then the cop, they end up going through that portal that's opened up, and they're in this, like, they're in the void, basically.
Yes.
You know,
there is a portal that gets opened up as well. The Doctor opens it up with the conception of this being, essentially. So the basement of this hospital becomes basically a portal to another world or universe or the void, whatever.
Yeah.
Hard to understand. I suggest watching it more than once, but
yeah.
for as low budget as it was, the effects are great.
Oh, they did a great job with the effects. It's super, super good. I love
highly
that
recommend
movie.
watching it. It sounds crazy, I know, but
yeah, I think Derek, my brother, told me about that movie.
I've showed it to everybody. I've showed it to everybody, and I will continue to watch it and show it to everybody.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great film. I love that movie. I wish I got to do that one because I love that movie. All right. I got, for my number 5, I picked The Ritual.
That's a good movie.
Yeah, this is a good one. I like this one. So it came out in 2017. Basically, it's these 4 friends that reunite because one of their 5th friend dies, basically. So they reunite and they set out on a hike into the Scandinavian wilderness. I don't think it exactly says where they are. I'm assuming Sweden is where they're walking.
Language. It's dubbed over, right?
Huh?
Is it dubbed over? I don't remember.
No, they're English.
They're English, okay.
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
I can't remember.
I can't remember either now, but no, I'm pretty sure they're English. But they go out into I think it's Sweden wilderness, and it's kind of a slow burn at first. Nothing really happens. They're kind of hiking. Some weird stuff starts happening. They think they're being followed. They end up in this weird supernatural forest that has a lot to do with Norse mythology. And there's this ancient evil that lurks in there, and it's weird stuff starts happening. There's in time loops. There's they see the thing that's chasing them and stuff like that. They eventually get kidnapped by this cult, or they actually I think wander into their.
I think they wander into it. They fall right into the trap.
Yeah, they basically walk into this cult and they get taken hostage basically and getting ready for sacrifice to this. Deity. So if any of you guys are familiar with Norse mythology, the deity, what I have found in the research, is what is called a Jotun, which is a ice giant from Jotunheim, which is, if you know anything, I'm not going to go into a whole spiel about Norse mythology, but it's one of the 9 realms of the world tree in Norse mythology, and that's where ice giants live. So the cult itself, there's nothing really talked about as far as name of the cult, but we can assume that they've been there for a while. There's a person in the cult that speaks English, so she's telling the people that are captive, the 4 friends, that basically what's happening. They're going to be sacrificed essentially. It's a cool concept. I think this movie was based on or made after a book. I believe by the same name that came out a couple years before the movie did. It's really good, and it's got all the cult aspects aspects. They're living in a commune out in the middle of the woods somewhere. There's a lot of them, but there's not hundreds of them. And they're basically just waiting to sacrifice to this creature that wanders these woods, which is a Jotun. It's also known as the bastard spawn of Loki. Loki's a god in Norse mythology. So they basically worship Loki as the god in their cult. And it's, this is all, this has been, this is real thing. People worship, there's still Norse pagans out there that worship deities from Norse mythology and everything like that. So it's kind of scary. This could really be a cult somewhere in Sweden where there is a creature roaming the woods. It's spooky. It's a good film.
It sounds like folklore almost, with the creature roaming the woods.
It is. It's a folklore thing, because it is based off mythology, so it's folklore.
It is a good movie though. If you guys watch it, it's almost like Blair Witch vibes at first. You almost think it's paranormal at first.
Essentially it is, yeah.
But I think it's on Netflix if anyone wants to check it out.
Yeah.
I believe it's still on there.
Yeah, it's a good one. This one, I really liked it. You got to kind of watch it a couple times to kind of make sense of what's happening. Cause
it's a little bit of a slow burn.
It is kind of a slow burn. It kind of gets a little boring because it's just them walking around. They're getting into arguments with each other. And the one guy's having flashbacks of his friend dying because his friend dies in a robbery. He ends up getting killed in a robbery.
At a gas station or something.
Yeah, and the guy that was having the flashbacks saw him get murdered basically. So he's there's a little bit with that. There's probably a little psychological aspect going on with this too that we could probably touch on, but I didn't really look into that too much. But Yeah, great movie if you want to know something about cults. And it is very culty, too.
It is very culty.
Especially once you get to when they're being held hostage by the cult. They're, like, bathing them and everything like that, making them put on certain clothes to be sacrificed in and everything. So, it's very good.
Okay, so my next pick is The Invitation, which, if anybody remembers a few years ago when Netflix had, like, really weird, scary movies on there, this was one of them. It came out. Yeah, they used to have, like, Human Centipede, things like that.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
Now Netflix is, like, elite. Like, Netflix won't put anything like that on there anymore.
I know, the good old days.
But in 2015, The Invitation came out, and I think this is a movie that isn't super popular. It kind of has a cult following. I watched it initially, and I've always had love for it. I just showed it to Nick recently.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit of a slow burn, like a lot of these are, but once you kind of realize what's going on at the end, it's a very suspenseful, scary movie, I'd say.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So essentially, there's a couple, Will and Eden, and they have a son, and he dies. I think he drowns. It's accidental drowning. So Will and Eden get divorced.
Mm-hmm.
And then a few years later, Eden invites Will and his new girlfriend over to the house for a dinner party. So they go over there, and Eden is remarried. She has a new husband, and all of their old friends are there. So it's kind of just like a reunion of everybody.
Yeah.
The only thing that's different is obviously this couple is now divorced, so they're kind of on the outs with each other.
Right.
Will is kind of having flashbacks continuously because he's remembering the house and, the son drowning. He's having some PTSD from that. And they're being very, I guess the best way I could describe it is they're being very culty.
Yeah.
Like, his ex-wife and her new husband are being overly friendly, super nice, super, like, catering to his feelings. Like, it's just very weird vibes.
Yeah, definitely.
And the whole time you're watching this, you're like, are they good? Are they bad? I can't tell.
Yeah.
And then they kind of get to a part where Eden and her new husband are kind of talking about this, I'm going to call it organization, because at this point, it was an organization that they're a part of. And they talk about this doctor, and then they show everybody this video clip of a woman basically being killed. She looks like she's almost on her deathbed, like hospice. And this doctor pushes this medication or does something, and she dies, and you watch her die in the video.
Yeah.
And everybody's looking at each other like, what the hell? She just killed the vibe. Like,
right,
what?
Yeah, exactly. Like, they're all having a nice evening, and they put this on, it's like some woman, like, dying.
Literally dying. This other man from their quote-unquote organization shows up, and he's very creepy as well.
That story he tells, too.
He talks about how he, killed his wife, and it's just very weird vibes. And then, essentially, you start seeing weird things, like the door's locked, and, only one person has the key, and there's all these weird things that happen throughout the movie, and Will is kind of going back and forth with struggling, saying, are we being trapped here? Like, can we leave? Are you guys going to do something to us? Are we in danger?
Yeah.
They start losing one of their friends, and he's like, did you guys kill our friend?
Right.
And then there's this big lead up to the dinner, and, they pass out drinks to everybody, and Will freaks out and says, don't drink it, don't drink it. But one girl already drank it.
Yes.
And she starts foaming at the mouth and dying.
Right.
So essentially, they were part of this cult. And the best way I can describe the cult is similar to Jonestown, like Jim Jones.
Yeah.
And they view dying as some kind of escapism for trauma. So anybody that's been through trauma, the idea is to kill yourself, and you'll go to like a higher level, and you'll finally be at peace.
Right.
So the reason Eden joined this was after her son, tragically died. She joined this as an idea to, I guess become at peace with herself.
Sure.
And she, everybody in a cult wants to convert everybody else. So you invite all your closest friends,
right,
and you kill all of them. But luckily, Will put a stop to some of it.
I think they all ended up dying, though, right?
All except for, I think, him and his girlfriend got out.
Yeah.
Because, they kind of lose their shit once the drink doesn't work, and they go around shooting people.
Yeah.
Because they're like, everybody has to die. Tonight's the night we have to die.
Yeah.
And at the end of the movie, Will walks outside, and you see all the other houses on the block, and people are being killed in those houses as well.
Yeah.
So this cult spreads.
Yeah, it's like a huge cult,
it's
too.
A huge
cult.
It's
like, they're in, like, Los Angeles, I think,
yes.
right? Yeah.
And you can see, because in LA, the hills, you can kind of see all the houses lined up.
Yeah.
And you see in the houses, all these people have, like, this light signal out.
Yes.
It's the same as their house.
Yeah, it's, like, signaling to start the sacrifice or whatever, or the suicide, I guess. And,
it's supposed to be a mass suicide of all these people, and they're supposed to bring all of their closest friends and family members with them.
Right.
But yeah, I couldn't find an exact name of the cult, but definitely Jonestown vibes.
Oh, for sure, with the Kool-Aid especially.
For those of you that don't know, that was kind of the same thing with Jim Jones. He preyed on people that had trauma, loss, things like that, and eventually had a huge mass suicide at the end and said, that was the way out, that was the way to get to the higher level.
Right.
And they all drank some Kool-Aid and started foaming at the mouth, and anybody that ran away or tried to escape was shot down.
Yeah, I know. That was, the crazy part, too, because once, the one girl died, and, they were all thinking, the guy, what's the guy's name? I'm sorry.
Will.
Will. They thought Will was going just crazy. They didn't believe him at all. And then, the one girl starts foaming at the mouth, and everyone's like, oh, shit, he's right. You know, they are. And then, the husband and wife just start killing.
And when you watch it for the first time, you're thinking he's going crazy. You're like, oh, he's just paranoid. He's hurt by his son dying, and, seeing his ex-wife remarried and happy, you're kind of...
Yes.
You're kind
good
of
psychological... That could have been in our psychological last week episode, too, because you kind of think he's just losing his mind, He's just, experiencing PTSD, really bad right now,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I looked... I found a website that kind of compared this cult with Jonestown, and it talked about, how the roots are basically in Christianity and communism, going hand in hand. Everybody feels the same way, everybody does the same thing. If you're going to kill yourself, everybody's going to kill themselves.
Right.
But yeah, it's just a very eerie movie. It's a very eerie movie, but it's a goodie.
It is kind of a slow burn, but, at the same time, it keeps you interested, too, because you're like, is Will really going crazy? And then you find out he's not, and it's like, oh, crap, good thing you were on his side.
Yes. It's sad, though, because it's preying on people that have gone through all of this trauma.
I know, it is sad. It
is saying them this idea of healing.
Right.
And in reality, they have to kill everybody to get there,
Exactly. Yeah, definitely a good film. I like that one. I'm glad you showed me that one, too. All right, I got for my number 6 here? I picked Apostle. So this movie came out in 2018. I think it's on Netflix still. It takes place in 1905. It's about this drifter. His name is Tom, and he travels to this remote island. I think it's somewhere off the coast of Scotland or Ireland or something like that. And to rescue his kidnapped sister from this religious cult, and they're holding her hostage, basically, to get this guy to come there. And when he gets there, it's kind of they're greeting him well and everything like that, and he's not really trying to, he's not going in balls to the wall, where's my sister? He's trying to, dig up answers and stuff like that. I think he ends up finding his sister and everything, which he's kind of, cool with how everything is there and stuff like that. She wants him to stay with them and stuff. And
I do remember that now. Yeah.
So he's kind of, well, what the hell? That's kind of weird. And then it's a long movie. I think it's 2.5 hours long. So as the movie progresses, it's kind of a slow burn too. It's a lot of him digging around. You start to kind of dig into the cult and everything like that. So the cult basically... I couldn't find a particular name for the cult, but they worship this ancient Celtic deity that's kind of like a fairy witch.
Oh.
And it's basically a Mother Nature kind of symbolism. Basically, you treat Mother Nature well, she'll treat you well with good harvest and everything like that, and all that stuff. And there's also another creature on the island. I forget the name of it. Look real quick. I had it saved somewhere in here. Give me one sec.
Yeah, I don't remember a lot of that movie, to be honest.
I can't remember. There was another creature that roams the island too.
It was definitely a kind of a slow burn kind of a movie.
Yeah. It's like I said, a slow burn. But anyway, I'll think of it in probably 3 seconds here. But basically, throughout the movie, it becomes more apparent that this is they sacrifice people and stuff like that. And there is a person that is sacrificed, and then I believe Tom becomes next to be sacrificed. I haven't seen this in a while, so I'm gonna have to rewatch. I should have rewatched it before I did this. I believe he ends up getting out alive from the cult, but I believe the whole town on this island goes down in this crazy fire or something that happens, and they all kind of want to die with the land and everything because Mother Nature is there. And I believe he even tries to kill this thing that they call Mother Nature, or this fairy. So it's a good movie. I couldn't really find a whole lot about the cult in it, but there are like cult aspects. Everyone's like the community helps each other out.
Right.
You know, there's all this that it's kind of like a weird take on Christianity, but at the same time, it's more like a pagan kind of society and everything like that too. So yeah, it's a good movie and definitely recommend it for sure. Again, it's a slow burn. It's a long movie. It's kind of like. The dialect is kind of like Old English too.
It is, yeah.
So it's kind of hard to follow. It's kind of like The Witch a little bit, but not that Old English.
Right.
It's not like Thou doth be,
Yeah.
stuff like that. But yeah, definitely a good one. Again, I'm sorry I should have watched it. Tell you guys a little bit more about it. But yeah, that's it.
Go check it out.
Go check it out.
Okay, so for my next movie, I picked again another underrated movie. I think it's on Tubi. I could be wrong. It's called The Last Shift, and essentially The Last Shift is about this rookie cop. Her name is Jessica, and she's trying to follow in the footsteps of her dad because her dad he was chief of police.
Mm-hmm.
He was killed in the line of duty when he was trying to take down this cult, and they killed him. So essentially, she's trying to follow in her father's footsteps and become a police officer. And she's there, I think she's doing the graveyard shift. It's just her there. And she's supposed to be able to go home, but she's waiting for the hazmat team to come and pick up some evidence from a case.
Right.
So she's waiting for him, and the whole time, you'd think that maybe like her eyes are playing tricks on her. She starts seeing things, paranormal aspects. Videos start randomly playing on the TV about this cult that killed her dad. And
Yeah.
it's actually called the Payman family.
Oh, shit.
Which I believe you touched on Payman earlier, the demon.
Yeah.
So she starts hearing like, the main creator of the Payman family. She starts hearing his like speeches and sermons and seeing videos, and there's times where she thinks that she sees members of this cult in the police station.
Yeah.
So the whole time you're thinking maybe her eyes are playing tricks on her, or their ghosts are coming back to get her, like to get revenge, to finish what they did for her dad, whatever.
Sure, yeah.
Essentially at the end, she thinks that the Payman family is all lined up around her, so she starts shooting, and, she kind of comes to, and apparently she shot the whole hazmat team instead of shooting the actual Payman family.
Yes, yeah.
And then at the end, she kind of, I think, like, her superior comes and shoots her because she shot the whole hazmat team.
Right.
And while she's dying, she kind of starts hymning the song for the Payman family. Like,
Yeah.
she's kind of giving herself to the higher purpose now.
Sure.
But the Payman family, from the research I could find from it, it's similar to the Manson family.
I was going to say,
Yes.
isn't it like it's very Manson-y like?
It's very Manson-y like. There's a man that runs it all.
He kind of looks like Charlie, too.
He
kind of
does, yeah. He kind of almost pimps out women to do his work for him.
Mm-hmm.
All the women have like a pentagram carved into their face.
Yeah.
Very creepy. But it's a super, super good movie because you're watching it and you're thinking maybe there's a ghost coming back, something like that.
Right.
But yeah, her dad was killed during a ritualistic suicide
Mm-hmm.
that the Payman family was doing. And then, she goes on to carry on his legacy, and the cult eventually gets revenge.
Yeah, essentially they come back from beyond the grave, really,
Yes.
Which
we touched on Payman earlier. He's a demon, so
yeah.
that was the demon that they obviously worshipped. But
Yeah.
yeah, great. I mean, I think it's a good movie. It's not very well known, but it's a good movie.
Yeah, I've like flipped through it a couple times and finally like watched it one day. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, this is actually pretty good.
Yes.
You know?
But yeah,
Definitely a good one.
definitely pulling vibes from the Manson family. And that's kind of what I was talking about earlier, how a lot of these movies pull from, real life cults in American history.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. All right, for my last one, I have got 2017's The Endless. So this was kind of like a sci-fi movie that also has cults in it. So basically, it's about these two brothers that escaped this cult. It's a UFO death cult, kind of like Applewhite there, Heaven's Gate.
Yes.
And they escaped it about a decade ago, but like as time went on, like the one brother is like, it wasn't so bad there, we should go back and check it out. And one brother's like, no, they were nuts, like we're not going back there.
I remember this movie now, yeah.
But then they get like a videotape from the cult,
Yeah.
and they put the video in, and it's like really weird because 10 years have gone by, but everybody still looks the same.
Mm-hmm.
And you think, okay, well, that just maybe they shot it 10 years ago, and they finally
Right.
nail it to them to get them to come back. So they go and check it out, and it's true. They haven't aged like a day since they left. Like, everybody's looks the same age. Like, nobody's like, 10 years older anymore,
right.
or anything like that. So it's very weird. When they get there, the one brother's like, yeah, this isn't so bad. I think we should stay. The one brother's, he's like starting to kind of buy into it again, and he's like, no, I mean, we shouldn't,
we shouldn't be here.
We shouldn't be here. But they're like super nice and inviting, the cult and everything. They're like, no, stay, and like they're self-sustaining. Like, they grow all their own food and everything like that. Very like commune-like. And then like weird stuff starts happening. They're still like kind of like, why haven't you aged? And they keep telling them it's because of like they're basically stuck in a time loop, and they're like, yeah, right. And throughout the movie, you start seeing like they find these people that are stuck in time loops. Like, there's this one guy that's continuously like running, and they're like, what's up with him? And he's stuck. He's trying to escape this time loop. He's trying to get out of the cult, basically. And yeah, it's just a really good movie. It's long too. I think it's like a 2.5 hour. It's kind of a slow burn. Nothing really crazy exciting happens.
Until the end.
Until the very end, which I honestly don't remember what the hell happens at the end.
I think there's like a spaceship at the end that they see.
Yeah.
It's like a UFO, and then they all kind of put 2 and 2 together.
Yeah, they get out of it. And
they do get out of it.
Yeah, but the spaceship's like coming after them, but it's like the spaceship's stuck in a time loop too. Yeah. It's because then it just like stops following them once they reach a certain point. So
very interesting movie. Now that I remember what it is now. Yeah, it's a super interesting movie.
Yeah, it's just like super heavy on the cult aspect, because it's like they're literally living back with the cult, and they're like going through like the day-to-day routine with them and everything like that. And like, they sit around the campfire, they'll smoke weed, they'll play guitar, they'll have a big dinner together and everything like that, and yeah, it's just super, super good movie. And it's very mind, because if you like anything science fiction, it's very mind-bending, because you're like, what the hell? Like that. Oh, okay, he's in a time loop. Of course he's going to be stuck running. And
right, of course they haven't aged at all.
Yeah, exactly. They haven't aged because they're just reliving the same time period, So it's very, very interesting, and definitely a really good cult movie, in my opinion. It's more of a thriller. I wouldn't call it a horror. There's nothing really horrific about it.
Well, I feel like that's the thing. I mean, there's some movies that are loosely considered horror.
Yeah.
And like last week I did Shutter Island as a psychological movie, which that's probably more of a thriller. But
yeah, exactly.
When I did the research for it, some places considered it a horror movie, and it's like maybe some people are scared by that. I don't.
You're right, and I can see how somebody would be like freaked out by this.
I mean, it's hard because you like want to loop in like thrillers and almost like even like for the psychological movies, we wanted to touch on Seven.
Yeah.
Which, with Morgan Freeman and Brad Pitt, which is more of a psychological kind of thriller, but...
Right.
Like I said, some sources did consider it a horror movie, so...
Exactly. Yeah, like that would be like one with like, I think American Psycho. I mean, yeah, it's like horrific, but it can also, I could see how some people consider it a thriller too.
But every Halloween, like the movie Halloween or Texas Chainsaw can't fit every... category or whatever.
Sure, exactly.
You have to branch out a little bit.
Right, exactly.
Okay,
so
for my last movie, I picked House of the Devil. House of the Devil was directed by Ty West, and the goal of this movie was to be very 70s themed. Like even the way the camera shot, if you didn't know any better, you would think it's from the 70s.
Yeah, it's like that grainy.
It's like, grainy. It's like it got a yellow tint to it.
Yeah, vintage look to it.
The way everybody's dressed is very 70s-esque, and yeah, if you didn't know any better, you would think it's the 70s. And I think it was a smart way to film this movie because I guess their budget was pretty low. So they filmed it that way due to the low budget, but you wouldn't know. You would think it's just intentional.
Sure.
But it was more just because their budget was low.
That makes sense, yeah.
But the opening title card of this movie says, there's a quote, and it says, during the 1980s, over 70% of Americans believed in the existence of abusive satanic cults. The following is based on true unexplained events.
Right.
And the movie is a typical horror movie. It's a girl, she takes a babysitting gig because she wants to move out. Her roommate is really annoying her, so she wants to move out. So she takes a babysitting gig at a sketchy house in the middle of nowhere.
Of course.
And she's like sus about it, but they offer her $400, which at the time would have been a lot of money for a babysitting gig. And then they disclose to her that there's actually no kids.
Yeah.
There's just his elderly mom that they want her to watch. So it's, we've mentioned it a million times, but it's a slow burn.
Yeah.
It's kind of like... It has a lot of the eerie shots of a scary movie. You know, the long hallways, everything's dark. She's checking out this old and eerie house.
Yeah, it's like a Victorian mansion,
yes.
if I remember correctly.
Yep,
yeah.
And then she has some scenes, like she has some risky business scenes. She's like running around dancing. She orders pizza. Like,
yes.
Then she starts kind of living it up as a babysitter.
Right.
Well, essentially, this whole thing has been planned and rigged. Even the pizza that she ordered was drugged.
Oh, wow.
It was drugged because the people that own this house are a part of this satanic cult, and they essentially use her as a human sacrifice.
Right.
So the guy that delivers the pizza, you know, he drugged it. So she wakes up and she's laying on a pentagram in the attic, and I think she's naked.
Mm-hmm.
And basically there's, like, mutilated bodies all around her on the pentagram.
Yeah, I remember it was like super gory. Like it just kind of
super gory, and then the couple that she's babysitting for, as well as like their other cult mates, they come out in their black cloaks, and they have all the check marks of a cult. They have like a blood-filled skull.
Right.
They've like painted some body art on her with blood.
Sure.
Like typical cult, typical ceremony that you've seen in a horror movie, and I believe at the end she does escape.
Right.
But I think it's just like a campy, fun horror movie, and there's all these little
campy. I like it.
There's all these little clues in it. Like even when she leaves her apartment in the beginning of the movie, you can see that she lives next to a church, and when she walks out of the house, she purposely walks the other way from the church.
Yeah.
So there's all these like little symbolic clues in there.
Exactly.
Her friend comes over and tries to save her and be like, "Dude, this house is weird. Like, get out."
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there's a locked door up in the attic, and then we kind of, the whole movie she's hearing noises coming from the attic, and she's like, "Okay, maybe it's just the elderly mom."
Right.
Like,
exactly.
I don't know what to think of this, and then at the end, she's part of the human sacrifice, essentially.
Yeah, I liked that one. That was a good one. And yeah, I definitely agree. It was like, you definitely get that retro, like 70s, like vintage kind of vibe from it. It's cool. I like that.
Yeah, Ty West said that the idea of a satanic cult like that would have made more sense if the movie was based in the 70s because of the satanic panic.
Exactly.
He's like, it doesn't work as well today. Like in today's day, people wouldn't be as like apt to believe it. But if it happened in the 70s, it's like, everyone was a Satanist back then. Everybody was
anybody with like long hair, and,
anything.
And metal t-shirts on.
Yeah. So he's like, it wouldn't have worked in any other decade, basically. So definitely a well done movie. Props to Ty West.
Yeah, and he's a great director too.
Yeah.
I mean, he did that. Actually, I'm surprised we didn't put The Sacrament because he directed that too, and that's a good one. That's literally like the movie rendition of Jonestown, essentially.
Yeah, there's a lot of good
VHS
movies about cults. VHS,
he did
we were going
too,
to
right?
put, yes. I think he did some. VHS is hard because it's a lot of different directors, and VHS is hard because there's some clips from VHS that have cults in them, but not the whole movie.
Yeah.
So I guess we could have touched on maybe some of the clips.
Right, exactly.
VHS probably deserves its own episode, honestly.
Oh yeah, that film series is just, I love the VHS film series.
We could have we could do that some week for sure.
Yeah, I think we should. I think that would be fun.
Alright, you guys, so we will be back next Monday.
Yes,
we'll come out with episodes every Monday with a new video. We'll be on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, with something new and spooky.
Yep.
Anything else you want to say?
Nope, just stay spooky, guys.
That's my line.
I want to say it.
Okay. Until then, guys, stay spooky.
Stay spooky.